There comes a moment in your life when the noise fades, when the distractions lose their grip, when the illusions you once entertained begin to crumble. And in that moment, you realize something unsettling. This is not a game. This was never a game. You were not created to drift through life casually, chasing temporary pleasures while ignoring eternal purpose. You were called, chosen, marked by something higher than your own understanding. And yet, too many are treating a divine calling like a passing interest, something to pick up when it's convenient and put down when it demands sacrifice. This is serious. There's a weight to purpose, a gravity to calling. It pulls on your spirit in quiet moments. It whispers when you try to sleep. It convicts you when you try to ignore it. Because deep down, you already know you are not designed for ordinary living. There is something inside you that refuses to settle, something that keeps reminding you, you were made for more. But here is the truth many avoid. You cannot walk in your calling while playing with things that weaken your spirit. You cannot step into purpose while entertaining distractions that drain your focus. You cannot carry something sacred with a casual mindset. Stop playing. Time is not as endless as it feels. Opportunities are not as permanent as they seem. Every day you delay obedience. Every moment you silence conviction. You're stepping further away from the fullness of what was prepared for you. And this is where it becomes uncomfortable. Because answering a true calling will cost you. It will cost you habits. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you relationships that cannot grow where you're going. It will require discipline when you feel lazy, faith when you feel afraid, and obedience when you don't understand. That's why so few truly walk this path. Not because they weren't called, but because they refuse to take it seriously. There are people who will hear this and feel something stirring inside them. A tension, a realization, almost like a quiet voice saying, this is about you. And if that's what you're feeling, then listen carefully, because that is not coincidence. That is conviction. You've spent enough time doubting yourself. Enough time minimizing what's been placed inside you. Enough time pretending you don't feel the pull. You do feel it, and ignoring it will not make it disappear. The calling doesn't leave. It waits. It waits through your distractions. It waits through your excuses. It waits through your delays. But it also watches what you do with the time you've been given. Because one day, the question will not be, did you know? The question will be, what did you do with what you knew? This is where the shift must happen. You must decide that your life will no longer be lived on autopilot, that your faith will no longer be surface level, that your purpose will no longer be postponed. You must become intentional. Intentional with your thoughts, intentional with your time, intentional with your growth. Because calling without discipline leads nowhere, and passion without commitment fades quickly. You are not given this awareness to ignore it. You are not shown glimpses of purpose just to return to comfort. You are not set apart just to blend in. There is something different about you, and you've always known it. Maybe you try to suppress it. Maybe you try to fit into spaces that never felt right. Maybe you convince yourself that it was easier to be like everyone else. But it never worked, because you were never meant to be like everyone else. And that difference you feel, that weight you carry, that internal pressure you don't always understand, that's not a burden. That's a calling. But calling requires response. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because every delay strengthens resistance. Every excuse builds distance. And every moment you hesitate, you risk becoming comfortable in a life you were never meant to live. This is serious. There are things assigned to your life that cannot be fulfilled by anyone else. There are impacts only you can make, paths only you can walk, lives only you can reach. And if you continue to play with your purpose, those things remain undone. So the question is not whether you're called. The question is, will you answer? Will you step into discipline? This is not a casual invitation you can afford to ignore or delay. It is a divine interruption that breaks into the ordinary rhythm of your life and demands your full attention. There's a weight to this moment, a seriousness that cannot be softened or explained away, because what is being placed before you is not temporary. It is eternal. Too many people move through life as if time is endless, as if purpose can be postponed without consequence. But there's a stirring in your spirit that refuses to let you remain comfortable in distraction. That stirring is not random. It is not emotional instability. It is the voice of a higher calling pressing against your soul, reminding you that you were not created to blend in, to waste time, or to treat your life like a game. While others laugh, scroll, and chase what fades, there is something inside you that feels unsettled, almost restless, because deep down you sense that your life carries a different weight. This is where many become confused, because the call does not always come with clear instructions in the beginning. It comes with conviction, with an awareness that something must change, that you cannot continue living the same way and expect to fulfill what you were designed for. The urgency you feel is not pressure from the world. It is heaven pulling on your attention, trying to wake you up before you lose yourself in things that will never satisfy you. There's a danger in ignoring this moment, because every time you silence that inner conviction, you train yourself to become less sensitive to it. What once felt strong becomes faint. What once moved you to reflect becomes easy to dismiss. And slowly you drift further away from the very purpose that was meant to define your life. This is why the call feels intense, why it disrupts your peace, why it refuses to leave you alone, because it is not trying to harm you, it is trying to save you from a life of meaninglessness. You may feel unprepared, uncertain, even afraid of what answering this call might require from you. But the truth is that the call does not come because you are ready. It comes because you are chosen. Readiness is developed through obedience, through the willingness to respond even when you do not have all the answers. The longer you hesitate, the heavier it feels, not because the call changes, but because resistance creates tension within your spirit. This is the moment where you must decide whether you will treat your life as something sacred or something disposable. There is no neutral ground here, no comfortable middle where you can acknowledge the call without responding to it. You are either moving toward purpose or drifting away from it, and every small decision you make is shaping that direction. The urgency is real because time is not standing still, opportunities are not waiting forever, and the version of you that could have been is either being built right now or slowly fading with every excuse you choose to believe. You cannot carry a holy calling while clinging to constant noise, because distraction slowly numbs your sensitivity to what truly matters. It is not always the obvious sins that pull you away, but the subtle attachments, the habits that seem harmless yet consume your focus, the endless stream of voices that compete for your attention until you can no longer hear the whisper that once guided you. There's a reason why the path feels narrow, why it often feels lonely, because not everything can go with you into the place where your purpose is formed. Something has to be released, something has to be cut off, and that process is never comfortable. Separation is not punishment, it is preparation. It is the moment where you begin to see clearly what was once hidden behind familiarity. The things you once depended on for comfort begin to lose their grip, not because they were always evil, but because they were never meant to hold the central place in your life. There are conversations you will outgrow, environments that will no longer feel right, patterns that once felt normal but now feel heavy on your spirit. This is the refining process, where you're being pulled away from what drains you and positioned toward what strengthens you, even if it feels like loss in the beginning. Many resist this stage because it requires honesty, and honesty forces you to confront the things you have been avoiding. It asks you to recognize how much time has been wasted, how much energy has been given to things that do not build you, how often you have chosen comfort over growth. This is not about guilt. It is about awareness, because awareness is what gives you the power to change direction. You cannot step into clarity while holding on to confusion, and you cannot move forward while refusing to release what is holding you back. There will be moments when the silence feels uncomfortable, when the absence of distraction makes you face your thoughts more directly than ever before. This is where discipline begins to form, not as a rigid set of rules, but as a daily decision to guard your focus. You begin to choose what you allow into your mind, what you give your time to, what voices you listen to. This level of awareness is what separates those who drift from those who move with intention, because purpose cannot grow in an environment filled with constant interruption. Walking this path will not always be understood by others. Some will question your choices. Some will misunderstand your distance. Some will even interpret your separation as pride or rejection. But this is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about protecting what has been placed inside you. You are learning to value your calling enough to create boundaries around it, to recognize that not every opportunity is aligned, not every connection is meant to continue, not every habit deserves to remain. As this process continues, you begin to notice a shift within yourself. Your thoughts become clearer, your decisions more intentional, your spirit more sensitive to what is right and what is not. What once distracted you loses its appeal. What once controlled your time no longer has the same influence because you're no longer moving unconsciously. You are becoming deliberate, aware, and focused, and that transformation begins with a willingness to separate from anything that competes with the purpose you are being called into. This calling will demand more than you expected, more than what feels comfortable, and more than what you initially believed you could give. It will confront the parts of you that want control, the parts that seek recognition, the parts that prefer ease over sacrifice. Obedience is not a surface-level decision. It is a deep surrender that reaches into your desires, your plans, and even your identity. There is a cost attached to becoming who you are meant to be, and that cost is often paid in moments where no one is watching, where the choices you make shape you quietly but permanently. You begin to realize that you cannot hold on to pride and still walk in obedience. Pride wants to be seen, to be validated, to be in control of outcomes. But obedience requires trust, even when the path does not make sense. There will be instructions that challenge your logic, directions that stretch your patience, and moments where you are asked to move forward without clear evidence of what lies ahead. This is where many hesitate because they want certainty before commitment. But this path does not operate that way. It invites you to step forward first, to trust that clarity will come through movement, not hesitation. There is also the cost of letting go of comfort. The life you are being called into will not always align with what feels easy or familiar. There will be seasons where you are stretched beyond what you thought you could handle, where the pressure feels intense, where the temptation to return to what is safe becomes strong. But comfort is often the place where growth stops, where potential remains hidden because it is never challenged. The calling pulls you out of that space, not to harm you, but to expand you, to show you that there is more within you than you have experienced so far. Relationships may also be affected in this process. Not everyone will understand the direction you are taking, and not everyone will be willing to grow with you. Some connections are built on who you used to be, and when you begin to change, those connections can feel strained or distant. This does not mean you stop caring, but it does mean you begin to recognize that not every relationship is meant to stay the same. Obedience sometimes requires distance, not out of rejection, but out of alignment with where you are being led. There will be internal battles as well, moments where doubt tries to speak louder than conviction, where fear tries to convince you that you are not capable, that you are not ready, that you should turn back before it becomes too difficult. These thoughts are not unusual, but they are not meant to control you. They are part of the process of being refined, where your faith is strengthened not by the absence of challenge, but by your decision to continue despite it. As you continue to surrender, something begins to shift within you. What once felt like a burden starts to feel like purpose. What once felt like loss begins to reveal its deeper meaning. You begin to see that every sacrifice is shaping you. Every moment of obedience is building strength. Every step forward is aligning you more closely with what you were created for. The cost is real, but so is the transformation that comes with it. And the more you embrace it, the more you become someone who is no longer controlled by fear, comfort, or approval, but guided by a deeper sense of direction that continues to pull you forward regardless of what it requires. When you fully embrace the call, something within you begins to shift in a way that cannot be reversed. The hesitation that once held you back starts to lose its power, replaced by a quiet confidence that does not come from ego, but from alignment. You are no longer waiting for perfect conditions or constant reassurance. because you have stepped into a deeper awareness that your direction is not dependent on circumstances. This is where authority begins to form, not as control over others, but as mastery over yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, and your choices. You begin to move differently, speak differently, and carry yourself with a sense of purpose that is noticeable even when you are silent. There's a clarity in your decisions that was not there before, a boldness that allows you to say no without guilt and yes without fear. You're no longer easily swayed by opinions, trends, or pressure because your foundation is no longer external. It has been built through moments of surrender, through seasons of refining, through decisions that required you to choose purpose over comfort again and again. This stage is not about perfection, it is about consistency. You are still learning, still growing, still facing challenges, but your response to those challenges has changed. Where you once reacted emotionally, you now respond with intention. Where you once avoided difficulty, you now face it with awareness. There is a stability forming within you, a grounded strength that allows you to remain focused even when everything around you feels uncertain. Your voice begins to carry weight, not because you are louder, but because you are aligned. When you speak, there is conviction behind your words, a sense that you are not just repeating ideas, but expressing something that has been lived and tested within you. This is where influence begins to grow naturally, not forced or manipulated, but drawn from authenticity. People begin to notice the difference, not always understanding it, but recognizing that there is something steady, something real, something that cannot be easily shaken. You also begin to recognize your responsibility more clearly. This calling is not just about your personal growth, it extends beyond you. The way you live, the choices you make, the integrity you carry, all of it begins to impact others in ways you may not always see immediately. You become aware that your life is communicating something, whether through your actions, your discipline, or your consistency. This awareness brings a deeper level of accountability because you understand that purpose is not meant to be hidden or treated lightly. There's also a deep sense of direction that continues to guide you forward. Even when you do not have every detail figured out, you're no longer lost. There's an inner clarity that keeps you moving, a sense of alignment that helps you recognize what is right for you and what is not. You're not easily distracted anymore, not easily pulled away, because you have seen the cost of drifting and you have chosen a different path. This is where purpose becomes action, where everything you have been learning, everything you have been refining, begins to express itself through the way you live your life daily. It is no longer just something you think about or talk about. It becomes something you embody, something that shapes your decisions, your priorities, and your direction as you continue to move forward with a sense of certainty that is rooted in something far deeper than temporary emotion.